Welcome to this issue of Why We Plan. My name is John Brown. I'm the founder of BEI. And with me today, and I'd like to speak the name in Italian, but I'm not going to try my Italian, is Robert DePalo.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, John.
So how did you get involved in the whole exit planning world?
So, like many other Guardian firms, we started looking deeper into it because we had many high net worth clients who, as we looked at their balance sheet, had a line item for their business. And
worth $3 million.
$3 million. $3 million with a $5 million net worth.
Yeah.
And then the magic question always came up down the line: how do you crack the piggy bank?
Yeah.
And the farther along we got along, the more the people had the questions, nobody had the answer.
Yeah.
And the more we learned about BEI, we realized they have a systematic formula that works well, like everything else we do. There has to be a process, and it has to make sense.
So how do you, and so you're also an attorney.
Yes, I'm an
So
attorney.
you're not practicing law now, but has that proven useful in this whole planning process?
Yes. It's been very useful because, as many people know, advisors speak one language, accountants speak another language, and attorneys speak another language. Being able to bridge the gap and then bring it back to plain English for a client is a phenomenal skill that's helped a lot for me.
Yeah.
Because we may see one thing as an advisor, but when I put my attorney hat on, they're looking at it from a different lens, and you have to explain to them how it marries together to get the optimal solution.
Yeah, that's great. So when did you start with Guardian?
I started with Guardian 4 years ago.
Okay. So did you do any, probably didn't do any exit planning at that point?
At that point, I was managing a small team and doing a lot of traditional planning for individuals.
Okay.
A lot of high net worth, upper middle class individuals doing traditional planning. The more into planning we got, the more credibility you got.
Yeah.
And the more I was working with people, we got more and more into the business owner market. And you started doing buy-sell agreements and started bumping into the other traditional next level of planning, which as people get more advanced, they start working into. And it was just
you were
a
on a
natural
fast track, though.
Yes. Just from my background from being an attorney and everything else, it just naturally flowed and naturally fit my skill set.
Yeah. So what? Tell me about a typical client you might work with now. How did that client come to you? How did you engage them, and what do you do for them?
So most of my clients come through referral partners.
Okay.
So what does that mean? I like to educate other people because we're in an education business.
Yeah.
If we educate people in other fields such as accountants, lawyers, property casualty individuals, they're working with individuals just as much as we are.
Right.
And they overlook these opportunities because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And by having seminars and things to educate them on what they should know about this stuff, they end up always raising their hand and going, hey, I know somebody who needs that. But the other thing, which is a phenomenal tool, which is provided by BEI, is the newsletter. We send the bi-monthly newsletter. Probably once a month I get somebody saying, oh my God, how'd you know that this was something that we'd be needing to talk about?
That's interesting. So so that's a newsletter that you brand with your firm name, your picture, your contact information, and so on. So it's your newsletter. And you're sending that out. How many people do you send it out to?
So I have the list connected to my entire LinkedIn contacts plus other people. Anyone I ever touch ends up on my list because even if you're not a business owner, you know somebody who's a business owner, and you're going to always hear the questions. And the beauty is it doesn't just talk about exit planning. It's about real life things that relate to people, like family dynamics when transferring a business and different things like that. And my list is probably just around 1,000 people. But the amazing part is most email lists get about a 4 or 5% click rate. It's getting a 26% click rate that I'm getting over 125, 130 people reading it going, this is like really informative and not
it's from
pitching
you.
a product. Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, it strikes me that with our members, our advisors who are, let's say, under the age of 45, really use these social media tools we have a lot. Older advisors are getting into it, but most of them don't have a list of 1,000 people. How did you get that list?
So again, it started out with my LinkedIn contacts. And then the other thing which I did was what I call best practices, I added it to my email signature. So on the bottom of my email signature, it says, hey, if you're interested in my business planning newsletter, click here to add your name. And then it leads the hyperlink to the exit planning site to put your name and email address in. And people have added themselves. But the other thing I do
You
is...
don't even do a thing.
With those people, I don't even do a thing.
Yeah.
And I probably get 5 to 10 people a month that do that.
Yeah.
But then anyone else who, like I mentioned, could bump into somebody who's in a business, I'm automatically, after a meeting, if I got a business card from you, best practice, I automatically add you to my email list, automatically add you to my CRM system, because I never know when you're going to come up again. And I want to make sure that there's a touch point that you remember my name.
Wow. So you get, say you average 10 to 15 people a year that are responding to you. Just from
That's probably about right. Probably somewhere between the 10 and 20 range.
Okay, so it might be more than that. All right, 10 to 20. Do you have conversations with all those people?
Most of them I do. Most of them, I'll usually pause, go back to the newsletter, see what caught their attention, and prep myself for the conversation to know where the conversation's probably going.
So you know what articles they're reading, what subject matter. So if somebody's reading every newsletter on key employee incentive planning or something like that, you're primed, you're prepared.
Yes.
That's great.
And I like going into the topics because sometimes it's a door opener and there's a bigger issue there that they don't even realize yet.
Yeah.
Because they're just feeling that one pain point at the entryway.
Right. That's great. So have you developed clients out of that as well? Or?
Yes. So out of those methods, we've developed a bunch of clients. So as of right now, of the 4 to 5 cases I have in process, 3 came through those methods of educating a COI or the newsletter, because they've just raised their hand and said, hey,
I'm interested.
I'm interested.
Yeah.
And the beauty of the part of the platform is the way it's designed, building the team. Other advisors, which I'm bringing onto those plans now, are going, wait a minute, I got a few more people we should be starting to talk about. Put them on your radar. And now those are next round of clients already lining themselves up just from doing the right things that no one else is doing in the area.
That, at least with the newsletter list, it doesn't take any of your time.
Nope.
Developing your network, that would take more time than that. Obviously, it's a one-to-one meeting, but are you prepping that even by sending them newsletters ahead of time or other material?
Twofold with that. So with that, I do 2 different things.
Okay.
The first is I'll do a newsletter or grab somebody to lunch. Like if I see somebody who's really prominent in an area, I am reaching out to them, trying to get on their radar, and making sure that they want to meet with me to grab lunch or do something, and I make it attractive for them. Because again, if I'm giving to them first, it's going to come back.
Yeah.
Outside of that, like you said, it's very time consuming. For those B or C level people who I'm not sure if they're the top expert, but they're going to know context and they're going to know people who we're going to want to work with. We also hold which me and one of my partners developed, is a 2-pronged seminar. The first seminar is we bring in all the exit planning partners, the CPAs, the PNC people, the accountants, and we only allow 2 to 3 people from each profession.
Are these people, are these advisors you and your partners are working with now or just want to work with?
People who we want to work with.
Okay.
And then we educate them on how exit planning not only benefits their clients, but will benefit their business. Because what's the reward to them to getting involved in this process?
So do you have a PowerPoint that you give them?
So I go through a modified version of the 30-minute briefing.
That we provide?
Yes.
Yeah?
And then I tied in slides which show the benefits of each role. So the benefits of the CPA, the benefits of the attorney, I've turned those into slides. At the end of that presentation, I said, if this is something you're interested in and this is something you want to get involved in, we're going to hold another seminar in 4 to 6 weeks. If you want to come back to the next seminar, you have to bring 1 client. If you look around the room, there's only 1 or 2 other people in your profession. If everyone brings back 1 or 2 clients, I'm promising you'll get 3 or 4 back. Half the room probably does nothing. Half of the other half want to be involved but make up a reason why they haven't gotten somebody yet. And you keep them a little bit on the side burner. But a quarter of the room is coming back saying, I'm in, let's go. And if there's a role or a position that we don't have somebody filled in, I'll go back to my exit planning roster, my team in Epic, and say, hey, who's a good blank to fill this position, and have them work with somebody else who's gone through the process. And it excites them because it's hands-on, it's interactive, and they're not just throwing a name to the hat. It's like, oh, wow, I'm not working on one case. We're working on 3 cases now, and I'm really excited.
You're doing most of this via the internet.
I'm doing a lot of it face-to-face.
Okay.
I still like face-to-face.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like you get a more personal touch. Being able to talk and then come shake your hand and have a 5-minute conversation can change dynamic 100% from what you thought initially.
Yeah. So you have rapidly developed a pretty full practice.
Yes, I mean, knock on wood, I saw an opportunity, and even though I might not be a first mover, I want to catch traction up to be in pace where I should be to be equal to or pacing the first movers in this area, in my area.
Yeah, well, I think you're doing that. We had a speaker earlier today about how do you be successful? Well, you start to act. Take action. Don't be talking about it. So you've seen a process you like, you've used it, you've maximized its potential, and now it's going to continue to grow on itself. Because the way you're doing, like your live meetings, they're going to feed on one another.
Yes.
Because some proportion of people that didn't respond at first are going to come back in, so it's basically creating a good funnel of activity.
Yes. And the other thing it does is also bring professionals who are all eager to do things. You might be an attorney, I might be the financial advisor trying to do exit planning, business planning stuff, but Joe, the CPA in the corner, is a really good CPA, and you needed help with something. You go, hey, what's this? And then all of a sudden people are inter-networking with each other on different areas at the same time, so the value add just keeps multiplying to the people who get involved.
That's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
What any other tools you're using? Sounds like you're using PowerPoints. You're using handouts like the roles of the advisors to incorporate that in, which is clever. The newsletter, white papers. Do you ever use those?
I'll use the white papers, but I'll typically use the white paper in a situation where I have a client's existing relationship who doesn't agree or doesn't get something. So I'll use it as a
specific purpose.
Purpose. I'll look in and pull a white paper on a specific topic to say, hey, look, I want you to do some research. Here's a white paper, read through it and get back to me. I understand your pushback, but here's an alternative view, which I want you to come back with an educated discussion. And more often than not, they'll come back and go, it's not the way I typically do it, but it makes sense. Let's see what happens.
Okay, that's great. And I guess a couple more questions. I like the way this podcast is going because we're really talking about feet on the ground tools that you use. So how do you working with a lot of advisors, how are you finding the likely good advisors in your area to work with initially? Is it through your other relationships that you have with advisors? Is it your partners?
So it comes through a bunch of different avenues.
Okay.
So being that we're at a firm, we have a lot of different advisors in different stages of their career. I have some older advisors who have business clients and they just don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
We have some younger advisors who are very green and just good to be boots on the ground and make phone calls.
Uh-huh.
And there's everything in between. So
are you an in-betweener?
For the most part, pretty much in between. But when I look through this all and I talk to people, we said our initial client, our initial offering, being that I was on the management team as managing director and helped develop teams, was we have to educate our first client. Our first client are our advisors. So our first initial pool of people we went to when we developed this was, hey, we're going to teach you this, but we're going to teach you just enough to open the door. Have the initial question. Hey, John, you have a great business. I really love how successful you've been. What's your plan for 3 years from now? Oh, that's great. What's your plan for 5 years? Great. Oh, did you ever think about what you want to do when you're out of the business? Those simple questions which we all talk about, they go, I really don't know. Or, I'm thinking it's going to so-and-so. Oh, do you know the repercussions of doing it that way? No, I think you should really meet my partner. He specializes in that. And I think, if anything, it's just a little food for thought.
Yeah. Interesting.
And that really got us our first 4 or 5 cases to open up the group. And then as people started seeing it and as we started tapping on other advisors we knew, it just caught on like wildfire that people were like, that's something different. I haven't seen that before. I want to know what you're doing.
And this is all within your agency?
It started within our agency, and now I probably have about 4 or 5 attorneys that I speak to once a month that are really eager. I have about 2 or 3 accountants, and I have a business consultant and 2 outsourced CFOs who all talk to me on a regular basis that are like, this has worked for a lot of people. I can refer more people, and they get involved.
And so these people, I'm assuming, are also part of your team of advisors that you refer in when you're doing a case?
Yes.
So are you the lead advisor on the creation of all these exit plans, and that you're bringing in these other advisors?
Yeah, so when it comes to the actual Epic plan, I am taking the quarterbacking role. I'm using the Epic software and following through the steps. I really like using the assessment tools. I like using the value drivers. Those are good starting points to get conversations going.
Right.
2 clients, we were actually talking about that they wanted to do their buy-sell. And I said, while you're doing your buy-sell, this is right in line. We should talk about business continuity instructions. And like, what's that? Hey, well, that's a simple offering we have. I'm going to interview you with some questions. And God forbid something happened to you. I know you and your partner are partners, but your wife doesn't know what goes on with your partner. And if something happened to you, do you think she should know how to handle a situation, or is she going to have blind faith in your partner? And she goes, I really like that. Can we talk about that? Yeah. And it leads to opening the door to more questions. And like, I forgot what session was today, but it doesn't matter what step you start on. As long as you're going through the process, it happens. Like, I had another client
Absolutely. Yeah.
who we started out with personal planning. And as we got into the personal planning and looking more and more into it, it went back into the business planning.
Oh, that's amazing. You've done a lot in a very short time. I'm very impressed with that. Are you enjoying this?
I love it. It's like a new passion because it's a differentiator. It's funny when I talk to people, oh, you're a financial advisor. Oh, what are you going to do? Try to take my money and invest it? What are you going to do? Sell me life insurance? I'm like, no. I'm going to figure out what you want to do and find the solution to get you to where you want to be if you own a business. Yeah. And people are like, so does that involve investments? It might. Does it involve insurance? It might. It depends on what we're talking about, what you need to do. And the fact that there's no cookie cutter answer has gotten a lot more people intrigued, because sometimes the solution we give is just a little bit of guidance to their accountant or their lawyer. And you're like, well, you pretty much had it covered already. Here's a little tweak.
That's great. So, the other thing you're doing is you're making a difference in the lives of a lot of people, because if you don't go into that relationship and do that exit planning, nobody else is. All of the advisors you're talking to, they're not going to do it. No. They haven't done it. Maybe we can get them to start doing exit planning, and as they learn more, I'm sure they'll have more of an interest. But generally speaking, other advisors, almost universally speaking, they're not asking the questions you're asking, and they don't have the tools to provide at least a pathway to solutions.
Yes, I mean, it's very true. Like, most advisors don't ask the questions because either they're afraid to ask because it gets too complicated and out of their comfort zone,
right?
Or they just don't know. And the ones who sort of know get petrified by it. Like, when we start getting into supplemental executive retirement plans or other structures like that, they're like, I kind of know what it is, but they don't want to get into it because they don't want to tarnish their reputation by getting into an area that they're not great at.
That's way all we professionals, we're hesitant to go into areas that we haven't tread on before, but you've learned what to do, so you can tread freely.
Yes. And the fact that I have the legal background helps a lot.
Yeah.
And usually the biggest pushback, which we got on our first 2 cases, were the lawyer's like, why do you know so much about the contracts? Well, do you think this is right? Are you a lawyer or something? I'm like, well, actually I am. And they're like, oh, where'd you go to law school? I'm like, oh, Hofstra. And they're like, oh, when did you graduate? And then we started getting into a conversation. And then it became from having the financial advisor who many attorneys view as a salesperson looking to push a product to, oh, you're a peer with a specialty. So let's divulge further into how we can work this out.
Yeah, that's great. Anything else?
I just love doing it. This really became a passion for me in my practice and re-energized me to do a lot more than I've ever done in the past, because as much as I liked helping people, I never saw the initial impact as quickly and as rapidly as getting into this.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, that's why we plan.
Yes.